Welcome to Upstart Footy Preview for round 24. In the words of Europe, we're on the final countdown because there's 1 week to go until the AFL Finals Series and we are very excited. I'm Ben Waterworth. He's big, he's got a big personality, he's excited, he's Japanese, he's Metlink's #1 customer, John Takemura. Good to see you again, Foss.
Yeah, good to see you, Benny. Big round of matches, particularly Collingwood and Geelong on Friday night. Can't wait.
Wow, what a way to start round 24 with Collingwood hosting Geelong at the MCG tonight. First versus second. Will they play their best teams? All heaps of conjecture during the week about which players will be lining up. Nick Maxwell is one of them. Thumbs up. Will he come back from a broken thumb? We'll have to wait and see. Will Harry Taylor play from concussion? Will Joel Corey play? I don't know, Jay. I think both teams will go at it hard, both hammer and tong. Get the feeling, though, that Collingwood is looking a little bit more secure than Padlocks at the moment, and I think they might get the chocolates tonight.
Yeah, Geelong disappointing last week, got smashed at the clearances by the Swans. They'll want to atone for their defeat, but Collingwood in super form. Leon Davis, he's having a renaissance down at half-back, and I think they'll be too strong for a Geelong side who will get Cameron Mooney back. I think very important. Yep. I think he'll play instead of Tom Hawkins, who's really struggled this year, but it does depend on which teams play, but I think Collingwood by about 4 or 5 goals.
Early game on Saturday afternoon is the Gold Coast Suns hosting Hawthorn up at Metricon Stadium, JTAC. Gold Coast Suns, 3 wins. I don't think they'll add to it. Hawthorn will win. Hawthorn are certainly the X factors of the finals series. If their good players are up and about, those top 6 or 7 players can match them with anyone on any given day. I think Hawthorn will do this one very easily. Yeah,
can't agree with you more there, Benny. I think Hawthorn in good form coming into the final. Sam Mitchell's going to come back from injury. Not sure if they'll play Cyril Rioli. I don't see the point really leading into a big final. Gold Coast, they've been not too bad, I think.
Been all right.
Clearly, they're needing the finish line now. Their young players are getting tired, but they showed quite a bit last week against Melbourne. If they had done a bit more in the second quarter when they had the dominance of the game, I think they could have won that one, but I think Hawthorn will be too strong.
Saturday afternoon sees Western Bulldogs hosting Fremantle at Etihad Stadium. Both teams desperate for the end of the season. I think the Western Bulldogs will win this one, JTAC, but I think the most interesting thing about this game is that members of the Western Bulldogs will be signing a petition, or will have a petition for people to sign around Etihad Stadium to change the name back to Footscray. Of course, the old name, the origination of the club. Interesting because Greater Western Sydney will be into the competition next year, and the Western Bulldogs, a bit of a clash of identity there. Maybe the Footscray thing might work. Is it a realistic possibility, though?
I'm not sure if it's too realistic. Originally, I think the Western Bulldogs was brought in because they were going to actually move the Bulldogs to the west of Sydney. But my main, not concern, but I think the Bulldogs should be wearing their 1954 Premiership jumpers on a permanent basis. I think it looks good and it really shows the club off in the right way. I'm not sure about whether the club's going to be renamed Footscray though. That's going to take a bit more work than.
Got to go through all the top wigs. I don't know if it'll happen.
But Dogs and Fremantle. Going back to the game.
Oh, sorry, Jay. Yes.
Dogs and Fremantle, 2 sides who want the end of the year. Injury lists longer than our arms combined. Callan Ward, sad to say, I think it will be his last game for the Western Bulldogs. Can't begrudge the young man for going over to Greater Western Sydney with the money and the contract on offer. But I think the Bulldogs should be able to win this, Ben.
Sydney hosting Brisbane at the SCG on Saturday afternoon, Saturday twilight, I should say, JTAC, because, of course, the AFL will be bringing this time slot in next year when Greater Western Sydney come into the competition. Swans have had a lot of inspirational victories in their history, JTAC, both as South Melbourne and as Sydney, but maybe none more as inspirational as last weekend against the Cats, doing it for Jared McVeigh against all the odds. Fantastic effort. Brisbane will be competitive. They've pushed Collingwood and West Coast big time the last couple of weeks. That midfield of Rich, Redden, Rockcliffe, Lundberger will be something to deal with in a few years' time, but I just get the feeling the Swans, with a home final up for grabs, will be too strong here.
Yeah, Sydney, they showed a lot last week when Geelong came at them in the last quarter. Shane Mumford, absolutely outstanding.
Star, isn't he? Yeah.
And I think they'll win this game quite well. And well done to Luke Power in his career, 3-time Premiership player with the Lions. But don't be surprised if he ends up in a GWS jumper next year.
Perhaps not game of the round, but maybe the game with the most implications will be Carlton and St Kilda at the MCG on Saturday night. Carlton will be fresh coming off the bye. St Kilda, very impressive in the second and third quarters against North Melbourne last weekend. St Kilda playing for a home final here. They'll be desperate. I just get the feeling, though, that Carlton are a much better team than this time last year. They'll be preparing themselves for the finals, and I think the Blues will do this one on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think Carlton, they're much better at the MCG too compared to Etihad, where St Kilda seem to be stronger. Obviously, the Saints are playing for a home final, and they want to make a statement to beat one of the teams that are going to be in the finals. If they can win this game, they can show that they're still a contender. But I think Carlton, too fresh, their midfield's in good form. I think they'll win this game by a couple of goals.
The fifth game, take a big breath, J-Tac, on Saturday will be West Coast against Adelaide at Patterson Stadium. Good sign from West Coast last weekend. They were challenged, but were able to pull through in the end. That's a good sign of a good team, I should say. Adelaide, a little bit disappointing, J-Tac. Weren't able to quite get the chocolates over Richmond last weekend.
I did predict it.
I did pick it. Is that right, is it? I think West Coast will win this one quite comfortably, and Adelaide's season won't end on a good note.
Yeah, get the binoculars, Benny.
Oh, the binoculars. Now, I've got the double binoculars for a double J-Tac attack.
Now, the Adelaide Crows, last night at the AFL Tribunal, Jake King got a 2-match suspension after it was alleged that the Adelaide Crows had dobbed him in after the match review panel had given their findings for the previous round. Now, King was suspended for a sling tackle on Andy Otten from the Adelaide Crows, and there was 2 different medical reports from the club, and which both of them said that they didn't know which quarter he got the concussion in. So for Adelaide for dobbing the Tigers in, I'm giving you my attack this week.
Jeez, I'd be so nervy if I was in Adelaide right now. They won't win, surely.
No, definitely not.
Eagles easily. Perhaps the biggest game of the year, J-Tac, that'll just pack out Adelaide Oval will be Melbourne against Port Adelaide. First game ever in the AFL's history at Adelaide Oval. That's easily the most intriguing aspect of this game, seeing how the Adelaide Oval plays an AFL game. Of course, when they play cricket there, the square boundaries are very short, so it'll be narrow down the side, so might be a lot of out of bounds on the full kicks. We'll see. You know what, J-Tac? Very good read by you last week saying that Port Adelaide would push Essendon right to the limit. I get the feeling, a sneaky feeling, that Port Adelaide might win this game at Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, I agree with you, Benny. I think Port Adelaide will get the job done. Melbourne's record interstate is very, very ordinary. And Adelaide Oval's not an easy ground to play. Port Adelaide, most of their players would have played sandful football there at the Adelaide Oval. Long, narrow ground with square pockets, and I think Melbourne will take a while to get used to it. Tom Scully, likely to be his last game, I think, for the Melbourne Football Club, so Melbourne will try and get a win for him. But I think Port Adelaide might avoid the wooden spoon and beat Melbourne.
Big sigh of relief, J-Tac, because the last game of a long 24-round season will be Richmond against North Melbourne on Sunday afternoon at Etihad Stadium. Like a Holden Commodore going down Blackburn Road in Doncaster, J-Tac. Richmond have been turning heads in the past couple of weeks. They are in fantastic form at the moment. Trent Cotchin, very good last weekend. They'll play a North Melbourne side who are bitterly disappointing, J-Tac. I was at the game and was really, really disappointed with how North Melbourne played, particularly in the second and third quarter against St Kilda last weekend. In the form they're in, J-Tac, Richmond, there's a bit of genuine optimism, as there normally is at this time of year about Richmond. I think the Tigers will do this one.
Yeah, I think the Tigers can win too, Benny. If they win this game, they finish 9th for the seventh time since 1994. They showed some good signs last week. Martin Cotchin, they were both outstanding. Also, Brady Rawlings' last game for the club, fantastic servant for North Melbourne over 12 or so years. Hamish McIntosh playing his first game of the year and his 100th for his career. Question is, will he be playing against his future teammates next year?
Could be.
Very interesting. And also Brett Deledio playing his 150th game for the Tigers. Well done to him as well. But I think with Daniel Wells being out with a shoulder injury, he's a key player for him, and I think Richmond will get up.
Interesting to get your thoughts on Essendon. They have the bye this weekend. Will the bye be a good or bad thing going for them going into the final series?
Well, at the start of the year, you would have said bad, but I think it's advantageous, particularly with their injury count. And they should be fresh to come up against Carlton in the first week of the final.
Advantageous, bringing out the Oxford Dictionary style material, J-Tac. We like to hear that. Your work has been superb as always. Looking forward to seeing you for a big finals preview next week.
Yeah, should be good coming up to the finals, and 4 crackers next week for sure.
4 absolute crackers. Thanks for tuning in on bigfooty.com. We do appreciate your viewership. And stick around on upstart.net.au, of course, the magazine for emerging journalists.